Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into a truly terrifying 1977 encounter that sparked absolute mass panic and turned into one of America's most baffling cryptozoological mysteries. We're looking at a case that is genuinely bone-chilling, a story that has haunted the affluent, usually very quiet suburbs of Massachusetts for nearly half a century now. We're going to examine the evidence, we'll trace the exact timeline of this sheer terror, and then we're going to scientifically dissect this legend, literally gutting it to find out what was really waiting out there in the dark. Picture this, right? It's the dead of night on Farm Street, which is this dark, incredibly isolated Massachusetts road. Now, what really sets the scene perfectly here is that this specific area was already steeped in some deeply unsettling local lore. According to a local historian, there was actually a legend dating all the way back to the 1600s that Satan himself would roam these woods, riding through the desolate landscapes of Farm Street and just terrorizing the locals to the point of sleeplessness. So you've got an environment that is perfectly primed for fear. Then suddenly, slicing right through that oppressive darkness, a car's headlights catch these piercing, glowing eyes. And we're not talking about the eyes of a deer, not a raccoon, something entirely unknown. The sheer panic spread with incredible speed over just 24 hours. See, this wasn't one of those legends built up over decades. This was a sudden explosion of encounters. It all kicked off on April 21st at 10:30 p.m. 17-year-old Bill Bartlett was driving with two friends and he catches the creature right in his headlights. Just 2 hours later, at 12:30 a.m., another teen, John Baxter, has his own terrifying run-in while walking alone. And the nightmare definitely wasn't over. The very next night, two more teens, Will Tainter and Abby Brabham, spotted the creature crouching on all fours. That's 4 witnesses, 3 separate sightings, one incredibly condensed window of absolute terror. I mean, ask yourself, how does a monster appear to multiple people and then just vanish entirely in a single day? What's wild is that we actually have the sketch Bill Bartlett drew for the police immediately after his encounter. This wasn't some vague shadow in the corner of his eye. Bartlett got a really good look. And what he captured completely defies biological logic. When you see this drawing, you totally get why it terrified a car full of teenagers. It doesn't look like any kind of local wildlife. It looks, well, unearthly. Bartlett initially thought he was looking at a dog or a cat, but as those headlights washed over it crawling along a tumble-down stone wall, he realized he was looking at an absolute nightmare. All the teenage witnesses consistently described this terrifying, hairless anomaly. Let's really break down the anatomy of this thing. They described a creature about 3.5 to 4 feet tall, but with this disproportionately massive, watermelon-shaped head. The skin wasn't just hairless. It was described as having a rough, flesh-toned, peach-colored texture, almost like sandpaper. It had these long, spindly limbs with slender tendril-like fingers physically grasping the pavement. The eyes were like illuminated glass marbles. Most of them said glowing orange, the one actually reported green. But honestly, the most horrifying detail, its face was just blank. No visible nose, no mouth, no ears. Just those glowing eyes staring right back from the void. And the way it behaved was honestly just as frightening as how it looked. John Baxter's encounter is particularly chilling. He reported that the creature wasn't just standing there. Its feet seemed almost molded around a rock, gripping a tree trunk with those long fingers for support. It was totally holding its ground down in a wooded gully. Baxter noted feeling extremely uneasy because the creature didn't flee into the woods like a normal animal would when startled. Instead, it stayed low to the ground, almost as if it was drawing him in, ready to spring. Imagine being all alone in the dark, with something that doesn't run away but just waits for you. Understandably terrified, Baxter walked very, very fast back to the safety of the street. Okay, so let's flip the lights on. It's time to pivot from this incredibly scary campfire tale to the lab bench and scientifically examine what these kids might have actually encountered. We need to gut this legend and look at all the moving parts. What could possibly explain an alien-like creature living out in the suburbs of Boston, completely unrecorded by science, that shows up for exactly 24 hours and is never, ever seen again? Let's dig into the theories. So renowned cryptozoologist Loren Coleman, who was actually the guy who coined the name Dover Demon, noted its eerie resemblance to extraterrestrial beings. Specifically, the creature's physiology, the giant head, the spindly body, the blank face, it's incredibly similar to the notorious race of aliens commonly referred to in ufology as the Greys. Because of this, some investigators theorize this was literally a visitor from out of this world. However, skeptics are quick to point out a pretty major flaw in this theory. There were absolutely 0 UFO sightings reported anywhere in the Dover area at that time. Now, another really fascinating theory comes from zoologist and cryptozoologist Carl Schuker, who suggested a link to the Managishi. The Managishi is this small, semi-humanoid creature from native folklore. Schuker noted the connection because the physical descriptions are almost identical. Both feature a weirdly large head on a small, stick-like body, and both are known to travel either upright on two legs or scurrying along on all fours. It's a super compelling cultural overlap, and it really shows how we humans historically interpret bizarre shapes we see out in the wilderness. Let's move over to the suspect lineup. Over the years, researchers have proposed everything from a baby moose, which, to be fair, looks incredibly gangly and bizarre in the dark, to an escaped lab monkey, or even a red fox suffering from severe sarcoptic mange, which is an infection that causes complete hair loss and horrific, crusty skin conditions. The local police? Well, they initially suspected a coordinated teenage hoax. Meanwhile, investigator Joe Nickel proposed a completely different natural explanation, a snowy owl. So let's zoom in on the absolute strongest contenders here. And this brings us to Joe Nickel's primary suspect, a male snowy owl. When you break it down, the anatomy is shockingly compatible with the witness reports. Think about it. An owl has a double-lobed head that entirely lacks a protruding nose or a typical mammalian mouth, which perfectly matches that terrifying blank face description. Owls also have massive eyes that produce a really brilliant eye shine when they get hit by car headlights. And if an owl extends its wings downward while perched on a rock or a wall in the dark, those wings can easily be mistaken for long, spindly arms with long fingers at the ends. It's actually a classic case of misidentification in low visibility. Now, I know what you're probably thinking, but the witnesses swore it was 4 feet tall. And yeah, a snowy owl is only about 27 inches tall. But here, we have to factor in human psychology. We know from plenty of other cryptid cases that terrified witnesses frequently and unintentionally exaggerate the size of unknown animals. For example, in the famous 1955 Kelly, Kentucky alien case, witnesses initially claimed the creatures were 4 feet tall, but later completely downsized their estimates to 2.5 feet once the initial adrenaline and panic wore off. Simply put, fear literally makes monsters look bigger. Then, of course, there is the ultimate skeptical scalpel, the hoax theory. Despite thorough police searches and the participation of multiple researchers, absolutely zero physical evidence was ever found. No footprints, no hair, no droppings, nothing. Furthermore, isn't it highly suspicious that the only witnesses were 4 teenagers who all attended the exact same high school, and it all happened completely during their spring break? No adults saw it, no other drivers, just a captive audience with a lot of time on their hands. Local animals were acting completely normal too. Some folks even thought the kids were inspired by the alien movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. The researchers pointed out that movie actually came out 8 months after the sightings. Still, the extreme isolation of the demographic points heavily toward a coordinated prank. So the crucial point here is really anchored by the philosophical concept of Hitchens' razor, which researcher Brian Dunning uses to systematically hammer home the debunking of this legend. The kids told a very, very scary story, but an unevidenced story is just that, a story. As Dunning points out, nothing unusual having happened is simply our null hypothesis. Unless the Dover demon makes a sudden reappearance and actually leaves us some empirical physical evidence of its existence out there in the woods of Massachusetts, this remains a fascinating but ultimately unproven campfire tale born straight out of the shadows. The Dover demon remains a brilliant and fascinating example of how quickly fear in the dark can create a lasting legend. In just 24 hours, an entire town was absolutely captivated by a monster that likely never existed anywhere outside the panicked minds or maybe the mischievous plans of a few local teenagers. It really leaves us to wonder, as we walk down our own dark, isolated roads at night, what other monsters lurking in the shadows can be completely dismantled by the light of reason. Thank you for joining me on this explainer. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and remember to always question what you think you see in the dark.